Let's bring in George Tsilis, senior markets correspondent here. George, we're talking the consumer, talking credit card swipes. And, George, this stock's up modestly, up about 5%. It's pulled back from those all-time highs we saw last month. But if you're just going on the back of American Express's earnings report last Friday, that was a good one to the upside. So what are you seeing here in Visa ahead of earnings?
Yeah, I think that's a good point to bring up. I mean, American Express obviously is doing well from the standpoint of the corporate user and the affluent user of their products and services. And I think one of the things about American Express that's certainly different than Visa is they do have their own closed loop payment network. It's much smaller than Visa's, but nonetheless, again, American Express has more of a capital finance or balance sheet risk that Visa doesn't have. I mean, think about Visa, over $9 trillion of payments go through their network. The transaction processing behemoth in over 200 countries. I mean, essentially, when it comes down to payment clearing and settlement services, Visa, number 2, MasterCard. In fact, one of the things I researched when I was looking at Capital One and Discover is number 3rd in terms of payment network, but it's significantly smaller than number 1, which is Visa. I mean, this company is a behemoth. And just to give you a little tidbit here, a little factoid, when looking at the market capitalization of Visa, $550 billion, it's actually number 13 out of the total stock universe. That's bigger than ExxonMobil and JP Morgan. So I think that's something to be said for this particular company's network, long-standing barriers to entry, and profits. Incredible profits. If you look at what the estimates are for the business, $2.43 estimated versus $2.09 last year. So that's 16% higher on sales that are up higher, estimated to be 8%. It's $8.62 billion versus around $8 billion last year. But when it comes down to payment network intermediaries, Visa and MasterCard are really locked in. And I think that speaks to, looking at the 10-year performance of this company, it's over 500%. Last year, 17%. And I'll say this lastly, I know I'm throwing out a lot of information. I can't say if it's for sure, but I would say that this is probably the most profitable company out of the top 25 companies out there. They're generating 54% net income on 97% gross margins in the last 4 quarters. And that's tremendous. I mean, that's the most profitable, at least, out of any large mega cap in the top 10.
George, this is a story of how powerful it is to keep things simple, right? They do 700 million transactions a day. They make money off the swipes. And oh, by the way, with inflation staying higher, their fee base rises and stays higher. So the fact that they are growing 11% annual growth, they're buying back stock. This company, you're right. You called it the right way. It's a behemoth, George.
It is. So, I mean, there's so many different ways you can look at this company. Their durable competitive advantage, the transaction volume, but also the speed of the transactions. You got to think about blockchain and how it's so slow and it can't process the number of transactions that Visa can. And so if there's anything better than Visa, then I think that will become a competitive threat to the business. I just don't see it right now. And I think the market agrees with that, the way the stock is trending. You're going to see the stock drift lower based on market conditions and sell off and some, cash grab activity in the market, especially like we saw last week and the last 3 weeks, to say the least. But this company's got growth, it's got value, it's got income with dividends, and it's also got, a pretty generous share buyback program. Just in the last 4 years, they bought back about 10% of the total float. So it's got a lot of things going for it. I'm not saying it's going to go higher in earnings, but it's really a steady company. And if you just look at the financial profile of the business, it's sort of a case study for a great value company.
Yeah, and you don't get those valuations rising when you see the growth that this company has on a quarter-by-quarter basis also. So we'll continue to watch this. Thanks to George Tsilis, senior markets correspondent here, breaking down Visa for us.